By the end of today's episode, you'll know exactly how to get cast in almost any specific show that you want, as long as it's currently shooting, of course. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and wow, this is the 100th episode of the Actor's Career Compass. I want to thank you for listening in, and if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate if you could take just a minute to leave a review if you've been enjoying the show. And then you shoot me an email directly at martin@cityheadshots.com. That's MARTIN at city, C-I-T-Y, headshots with an S. Shoot me an email directly at martin@cityheadshots.com to let me know what the review said, and I will write you back thanking you directly. I really appreciate it. And today, we're going to be talking about specificity. How can you get cast directly in almost any show you want? Too many actors just hope to be booked in anything, but being specific is actually way more effective in the long term. Some of what I'll cover today includes how to figure out which shows you're right for, a few ways to get connected directly to those shows and be seriously considered, and how to really get noticed and taken seriously by the decision makers so you're more likely to actually book the job. So, in terms of figuring out which shows you're right for, there are a few things that I'd recommend you do. Number one is to figure out your types and brand. So think about the characters you can play and what your personality is. Do you look like a stereotypical cop or a lawyer or a doctor? While your face and body type can matter, other things also come into play, such as your hairstyle or the type of clothing you typically wear, even the way you speak and carry yourself. By being specific with a few types you can play and making sure your own personality shines through, you'll have a better idea of the kinds of shows that you can target. For example, if you feel like you can play detectives, perhaps you'd be good for something like Law and Order. The second thing that you need to do is actually look up a bunch of shows to get an idea of what you might enjoy being on. You can use Google or IMDb, and you can search for different shows that are currently shooting and make a list of 5 to 10 that you'd love to be cast in. Even if the show doesn't directly connect with some of the types you wrote down, you still might be able to target it. For example, a kids show that takes place primarily at a school might still occasionally need a police officer character in it, right? Now that you have your list, how do you actually get booked on that specific show? Well, first, you have to figure out who is casting the show. So who is the casting director? You can use Google or IMDb Pro to make this easy. There's also some other resources like Casting About or Up to Date Actor. You can follow the casting director on social media. You can attend some of their workshops, and you can even send occasional messages to them to break the ice. And then after a few months of knowing them and keeping in touch, you can actually ask them directly if they'd allow you to submit a self-tape to be considered for the show. Alternatively, you could even offer to be a reader for them in some of their auditions. This would allow you to build a relationship with them, and they may even love your reading ability so much that they offer you a role outright. This has happened numerous times before, and if I remember correctly, it even happened with Harrison Ford, if you listen to the episode I did on Harrison Ford. Now, the next way that you could go about getting booked in the show is if you have an agent or manager, you should tell them about the show. Let them know which shows you specifically want to be on, and they'll start figuring out how to get you there. If you don't yet have a rep, you can actually look up other actors who've been on the show and find out who represents them, so who their agents are. And then you can make those agents or managers targets to try to get repped by, right? So it's kind of, what show do I want to be on? Who is already in those shows? Who are those people's agents and managers? Okay, let me try to get signed by one of those people. Third way you could do this is by looking for auditions specifically for the show, right? So try searching on different social media platforms or even casting websites or Google, and you can find out if there's any open casting calls for the show. You might be able to submit yourself without even needing an agent. Next, you could actually try to get background roles on the show, and then you can do some tricks to try to increase your chances of getting a line on the show. Okay, I talk about this in depth. I may do a podcast episode on this specifically, but there's an article I wrote. If you Google City Headshots background actor, my article should show up. It's on the City Headshots website, and it's about background acting. And all you need to do is scroll down on that article to the section of how to increase your chances of upgrading your background role to either a featured background role or a speaking role. There's some interesting strategies you can use for that. Finally, you can also connect with some other people who work on the show besides casting directors. So basically befriending them over time via email or social media messages and asking them if there's any opportunities to work on the show, even as a crew member or, again, a background role. And that can at least get you to the point of being on set, and then you might be offered a larger role from there. There's ways to do this, but it's outside the scope of today's episode. But similar to the networking with casting directors, you basically do the same thing, but networking with other people. Now, once you've gotten to the point of finding an opportunity to audition, then you obviously want to make sure that you're being taken seriously by those decision makers. You want to be sure that your marketing materials, like your headshot, resume, and reel, are really strong, professional, and aligned with your types. You want to be sure that your acting technique is very strong. Right? I teach something called level 1, 2, 3, and 4. You want your acting to be level 4. You should also be sure to keep in touch with these people over time, as I said earlier, because you're probably not going to be offered the role or opportunity right away. It may take 6 to 12 months of networking with these people before they actually offer for you to audition for the show. And of course, lastly, you want to be sure that you're always acting professional, you're showing up early, you're working hard, and you're going above and beyond anytime that you interact with them. All right, so thanks for listening. Now, if you want to dive even deeper on how to get into major shows by networking with casting directors directly, I highly recommend that you check out my podcast called How to Find Network Level Auditions Without an Acting Agent, which is episode number 50. I describe in depth some steps that you can take beyond what was outlined in this episode on how to actually become friends with casting directors and turn those friendships into opportunities. Okay, check it out again, episode number 50, How to Find Network Level Auditions Without an Acting Agent. It's on the Actor's Career Compass. Finally, again, if you haven't yet, I would truly appreciate if you could take a minute to just leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world to me as a special celebration of the 100th episode. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.